Well, hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and welcome to Inside OC. 'Tis the season of giving, and giving, and giving. Will Uncle Santa put even more green under the tree or keep automakers, cities, and the state in the red? Well, no green for the LA Times as the newspaper giant declares bankruptcy. Where does that leave the Register? Well, we'll debate those stories and more, plus predictions for 2009. And joining me to do so on this special edition of Consider This, our citizen watchdog, Bill Mitchell, lawyer and Democrat Steve Young, and Republican pollster Adam Probolsky. Welcome, gentlemen.
Glad to be here.
Steve, let's start off with the Mike Corona trial. It's now the defense's turn. They've started firing back. There have been, since the last time we got together, some rather sensational disclosures. What do you make of the whole thing?
Well, every time you ask me about the story, I start off with, he is innocent until the jury speaks. But, you know, what we read in the newspaper is sounding pretty murky, and I think the defense team is going to have to pull some real rabbits out of their hat to save his skin.
Do you think, just from what you've seen so far, this first day or so of testimony, that they're doing that?
I haven't seen it yet.
I think he's in serious trouble. His problem is he's basically got to convince the jury that the very people that he surrounded himself with are liars, yet every one of them is convicted. And every one of these guys, whether it's Joe Cavallo, Heidel, George Jaramillo, he brought in. These are his buddies. So it's going to be a little credibility issue that I think Corona's got to get over.
It's going to be he hired some, you know, he hung around with some bad people, but it doesn't stick to him.
I don't think that works. And the other problem is as the sheriff, he's got a little higher duty of responsibility. You know, the average person can say, well, gee, I didn't know, or God, is that illegal? I didn't know. When you're the sheriff, you're held to a much higher standard. I think he's got a real problem.
You have to be above suspicion.
Adam,
and the rule is you can't go to bed with dogs and wake up.
The credibility issue is really on the people who testified against him. Like you said, all have been convicted or pleaded or do some sort of deal with the federal prosecutors in order to reduce their time, their sentence, their conviction. So I think they have a credibility problem. And from a juror perspective, you've got to take it from the side of Debbie Corona and then the other defendant. Both have kind of been separated from the trial, and the federal prosecutors basically dropped the charges against them. So if you're a juror and you're not looking at the media, which you're not supposed to, you're saying, wait a second, the federal prosecutors' case is falling apart here.
So I think most people suggest that was a good maneuver for the defense. But are they refuting the charges from what you've been reading so far?
I don't know if they're refuting the charges, but the charges are not terribly substantive. They're damning in the eyes of the average voter. If you had to bet
money, Adam, is he going to beat the rap?
I don't know what beat the rap means. I don't think he serves a day in jail.
Doesn't serve a day in jail. Bill, what do you think?
I think there's already a victory by the prosecutors because they've destroyed his career. Whether they prove a criminal act is almost secondary to the fact that he's been removed from office.
If you had to bet money.
I'm going to go with guilty.
And Steve, okay.
Guilty.
And, Adam, to go back, though, this putting aside guilt or innocence, some of this testimony recently that he had now like 3 women going on, and he had one woman talking to another woman that he was involved in, but she didn't know that he was involved with that one. I mean, some of this, he was a busy guy.
It's all terribly salacious and would make great fodder for some, MTV or probably more likely Showtime miniseries. But it doesn't, that sort of thing doesn't reflect necessarily on the job he did as sheriff. And so I think that's why the jury is probably having a fun time or a horrible time listening to these bizarre stories.
But the job
but none of it necessarily related to, well, that's exactly what it is. I mean,
no.
when he was sheriff,
it's whether he was honest or not, whether he broke the law. It has nothing to do with what kind of job he did as sheriff. He could have been the best sheriff in the world and still be corrupt and be convicted. His performance has nothing to do with it.
And I guess my suggestion is that I don't know whether he was corrupt or not, but none of the things there's no specific evidence other than convicted criminals saying that he did things illegal that point the finger at him doing anything illegal.
But even if they don't prove criminal intent, haven't they really proven that he's a bad actor?
Oh, he's clearly a bad actor in probably most people's eyes. And he, like you said, clearly the federal prosecutors, they're always going to win the end of the day, because as soon as they come out and throw the stink bomb at you, there's no way to wash that off. So you're right. They win from day one. That's why they're so dangerous.
Let me ask you, we've got two lawyers on this panel here. Bill, I'll go to you first. As an attorney, one thing that puzzles me, there's this issue of whether Don Heidel, had this get-out-of-jail-free card and got a guy off on a DUI or out of detention for DUI. Or why can't they pin it down? You've got one side saying it's a say-so. The defense comes back and are kind of suggesting that there's no evidence here. I mean, why doesn't the prosecution have the log entry and all that kind of thing? It's just hearsay stuff.
I don't know if it's all hearsay. They identified the person who got the benefit of the get-out-of-jail card. And the defense put on essentially the head of the jails that said, I know nothing about it. Well, if they really had the magic, their get-out-of-jail card, they would have played it. However, I speak not only just as a lawyer. My grandfather was a judge in Orange County, and Orange County is not always operated cleanly.
Okay. Well, anyways, a lot of salacious, but as Steve used the word murky, some of it's kind of murky. In less than a year, the city of Irvine has spent $1 million on the iShuttle, a free city-operated bus system connecting Metrolink John Wayne Airport and the large business center in between. Was it a wise investment?
Our detractors fail to appreciate that anytime you introduce a new mode of transportation, it takes a while for people to learn that it's there, how it can benefit them. And again, we're only really 6 months into this program.
A program that's been terrific for Metrolink commuters. The iShuttle operates from the Tustin train station and makes numerous stops along the Irvine Business Center. However,
Metrolink is a commuter rail, so everybody's going to work in the morning and then they go home in the afternoon. So in between that time, there's not a whole lot of business.
Irvine officials are looking at adding new stops in an attempt to revitalize those midday routes. They've already had to cancel all weekend routes due to a lack of interest.
When we launched it, we were beta testing a system. We wanted to see where the ridership would be strongest. We would never have known whether there was a strong interest in weekend ridership had we not deployed those buses. So I'm glad we did.
Crom says the iShuttle will eventually attract non-commuters, people shopping or eating in the city, not to mention those matriculating in Irvine.
I've heard of other people talk about this, but have the shuttle, the iShuttle, maybe go through, UCI.
Ridership on the iShuttle is averaging slightly more than 10,000 per month. That puts the city's cost at roughly $17 per rider. That's quite a price to pay. Then again,
I don't know a whole lot about it yet just because it's still relatively new, but I know that it's the first shuttle that's gone straight into John Wayne Airport from any of the Metrolink stations or any of the routes.
Well, the city planned to charge iShuttle riders $1 starting in September. Now they're holding off in hopes of getting more folks to hop on the bus. Well, Adam, was this a wise beta test by the city of Irvine?
I don't know about wise. The goal is to take cars off the street or provide an alternative mode of transportation, which I think is a noble cause. But we're Southern Californians and we like our cars, and it's probably not going to work without it being subsidized in some way. And one of the other reasons why it's as a dramatic failure financially as it is the economy. We were building density in the Irvine Business Complex there where this shuttle was supposed to service, and people were going to take it for a short hop to their office, and nobody's building anything today. So I don't think it was a horrible idea. In fact, as a commissioner, I voted to...
Well, we have to keep moving, so I'll say it was a horrible idea. But let's go on to the next thing. Right. Bill Mitchell, the L.A. Times' parent company, Tribune Company, has filed for bankruptcy. The L.A. Times is in bankruptcy court, Chapter 11 reorganization.
Well, it's interesting because the prominent national news story ties into this bankruptcy filing. Sam Zell bought the Tribune. The Tribune had already previously bought the Times Mirror Corporation, so there's a trickle-down effect. I don't think there's going to be a substantial effect on the Times or any of these papers. I think Zell needs to shed some of the debt that he incurred to purchase all these assets. He's also got to sell the Cubs in the Wrigley Field to generate some capital and cash to get out of here. I'm not sure it really has any impact on day-to-day operations at the Times.
Yes. What do you think, Steve?
I happen to disagree. I think that it's a portend for the future. We continually hear about the technology age. Print journalism, while it is the basis for our political system, our information system, it is 18th century. And we are coming into the 21st century. Everybody's online. Everybody's digital. The news organizations have to get to the situation where they are addressing people in an electronic, accessible way. And newsprint, even though I read it every morning, 3 newspapers, it's the thing of the past.
They don't cover Orange County, and so they could give away, they could write off their whole Orange County operation, and maybe they'd be profitable if they got rid of it. Or maybe if they actually had some reporters in Orange County covering us, they'd actually get some readership here. But people in Orange County don't read the LA Times because they don't cover Orange County.
But and the Register, then that raises the issue of the Register, which itself has been having financial problems, and of course they've been cutting back on coverage too. But let me ask Adam, I mean, doesn't it pose, and I know you're not a big fan of the LA Times, but doesn't it pose a question for our democracy if these newspapers, after all, this information people get online still is primarily generated by these newspapers? What's going to happen if they go out of business?
Well, it'll be bad news, and
so to speak.
The idea is that eventually it becomes a very small network of people who actually read whatever it is produced by a media organization, and then the rest of it is disseminated through other online media. But for the most part, newspapers today are going to look a whole lot different than they do today in 10 years.
May I make a comment on this? One of the things, though, everybody's talking about newspapers. Newspapers are becoming less and less the primary source of information. For example, Adam and I were talking before we started about Drudge, the Drudge Report. A lot of first-line breaking news is blogs.
Except you go on Drudge, and most of the links are to newspapers.
Right. Yeah. Well, but the point being is people aren't going to the newspapers for the source.
Bill
They're
brings
going
up a good point. Rumors. That seems to be more the stock in trade now.
Yeah. Newspapers still are the primary source for in-depth news. However, Steve is right. Long-term, newspapers have no future. They only have a future until the 4 of us are dead. We love newspapers. You and I, all 4 of us, we're going to read newspapers. When we're dead, newspapers will be gone. The kids today don't read newspapers.
My guitar gently weeps. The OC Insiders next, and then the top stories of the year when this special edition of Consider This continues. And now it's time for the OC Insider from the Orange County Business Journal. Well, Seal Beach-based fashion company Affliction has a bad boy image, clothes inspired by tattoos, heavy metal, and martial arts. But co-founder Todd Beard was a little too bad recently. He feuded with and allegedly threatened 2 business partners, Ultimate Woman fighter Kim Couture and her husband, and former world champion fighter Randy Couture. They got a restraining order against him. Well, Beard has apologized, resigned from Affliction, and checked into rehab. The company's trying to patch things up with the Coutures and hired some new executives. Affliction's rolling out a softer woman's line, too, blouses instead of the tank top style shown here. Still bad, just a little less so. Well, the stock market's been unkind to investors this year, and to most Orange County big companies. 4 of them, Allergan, Broadcom, Western Digital, and Beckman Coulter, have lost a combined $20 billion in value this year. Well, here's a gift idea for the holidays. Your name on the new Media Arts building under construction at UC Irvine. A brochure lists more than 50 possibilities. It'll cost $10 million to have your name on the whole thing, but only $25,000 to put it on a faculty office door. Well, that's it for the Insider. 2009 predictions next. And I'm back with Bill Mitchell, Steve Young, and Adam Probolsky, and let's get right into the top stories of the year 2008. Bill, what was the top story in Orange County?
Well, it's the economy. I mean, and while most of the country focused on the meltdown in September, remember Orange County had its meltdown months before that. You know, we were ground zero for not just the slowdown in real estate, but the subprime. And when the mortgage market collapsed, I think Orange County was affected more than any other place in this country.
Right, because when these firms, when the mortgages started melting, not only did people's houses go empty. But in the case of Orange County, a lot of office space went empty too, as these guys went out of business. Do you buy that this was probably the biggest story?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there are Orange County is somewhat insulated because we've got a lot of concentration of wealth here, but there's still major impact, and you've got all these folks that are living out in the Inland Empire that were working here that we are seriously impacting even more out there.
Do you think we kind of helped drive this whole car off the cliff? Meaning, we as Orange County, as a center of the subprime, Steve, did we kind of help put the pedal to the metal and get this whole world into this mess?
No, I don't think that is really what got us into this whole mess to begin with. And I think that's part of the problem with all of these proposals that we're getting out of Washington right now to try to fix it, is they really haven't identified what the problem is.
What was the problem?
Meltdown in the 24-hour commercial paper market, and in 1990, that's one. In 1998, the Clinton administration took away the PMI requirements that would have prevented this whole catastrophe in the subprime market. I think it's a combination of those two things.
Well, it was, as they say, a perfect storm. But I think when the banks stopped their credit quality, when they stopped applying normal credit standards to loans for all these other reasons that go all the way to Wall Street, that was the big problem.
I agree, and that's what PMI did.
That was because of Barney Franks and the Congress, who decided that they wanted to have a lower standard, and they wanted more people to be able to
I
have
agree with you
ownership.
in part, but nobody was twisting the arms of these banks. It got to the point where they didn't need Barney Frank to tell them to make the loans. They were more than happy to make the loans.
When they leveraged the Goldman Sachs of the world to leverage 40 to 1 on an inflated asset base, you can't blame that on anybody else but on Wall Street greed.
Okay.
Well, you can, and it's not just Wall Street greed. It's a combination of Wall Street greed and the opportunity of deregulation that was presented. That's the combination that created the issue.
But Adam, this will be a big story. This will continue to be a big story, and now we're seeing the fallout. We're seeing the state's deficit going up to $30 billion or whatever. Orange County now is laying. They keep announcing layoffs and furloughs, and they keep having to fill an even bigger and bigger hole. What are we going to see in the coming year?
We'll definitely see government shrink, and some people look at that and get excited because that's probably the place where it should have been.
You look a little excited about it.
No, I'm not excited about people losing their jobs, but I do believe that government has gotten too big. We have things that government, especially county government, ought not be in the business of, and I think we'll end up 2 or 5 years from now in a much stronger position with government more appropriately sized. But it's going to hurt badly for everyone, not just the several people that lose their jobs or the 1,000 people that lose their jobs, but everyone's going to hurt in some way.
Bill, in the midst of all this, Arnold Schwarzenegger, our governor, has now unveiled a global warming requirement that is going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Is this the stimulus we need in this economy now, or is this going to slow things down?
It may create jobs in the long run. In the short run, it's more California, unfortunately. And as a lifelong Californian, California is becoming an anti-business state, an overtaxed state. The state has fundamental economic issues, and the only good that can come out of this economic disaster, frankly, is if California files bankruptcy.
Steve,
I go just the opposite. I mean, we have a whole new technology that's coming on that everybody understands in a global perspective is going to be the future. We're developing California as the source of that
Steve, here's
for
the thing.
business.
California is the source of the Silicon Valley. Okay, government didn't have to help Silicon Valley to make it happen, and yet here we're going to pour all this money. If fighting global warming, green technology is so great, why does the government have to put the money in?
Because government is not only involved in protecting, it is also involved in facilitating. We have an internet not because scientists got together and linked up computers, but because the government facilitated public access to what had been created.
Well, it's a far cry from doing that and doling out billions.
Same thing with water systems. Same thing with road systems.
Okay, all right.
But it all generates business benefit, and that's what you're really looking at. Yeah. We need to stimulate business for jobs.
Computers talking to each other did not create Google.
All right.
Well, I understand, but without those 16, you never got to Google.
Let's get another big story. Okay, we all agreed that was the big story. Adam, you have a suggestion, too, for a big story.
the great park. I'm from Irvine, and it's much talked about. There's a lot of controversy around it. At the end of the day, it ought to have been in the most robust of economies, booming with residential and learning institutions and commercial and a great park, as it were.
Basically gotten a balloon so far.
And it's got a big orange balloon. The fact is, in this economy, it's going to take a whole lot longer, and the pitch is that that's okay. Assuming money isn't squandered over the course of time, this might take 50 years to build the great park, and we all just have to be patient with it and realize that this is not going to have thousands of homes overnight. It's not going to have all the features and great museums and Smithsonian West that people want. It's just going to take a whole lot longer, and at the end, we're okay.
Adam, don't you think that really, unfortunately, this has been mishandled? First, it was mishandled in the planning of the airport. The county screwed that up. I know Rick's not going to argue with me that he thinks there should be an airport. So it was screwed up by the county in the planning of the airport. And now, in a quick trade, remember, you were there, scene of the crime, when it went from a county to the city of Irvine. And now the city of Irvine is holding this county asset hostage.
See, I look at just the opposite. The success was for South County in killing the airport. That's where, right, you could have stopped there and had 3,000 acres of vacant, barren land, and South County would have been happy.
Okay, well, we're not going to re-argue the airport here. Just very quickly, we're just going to run through it quickly. I think another big story in the year was Broadcom, the options backdating, and you talk about Corona. You got Nick Nicholas and his indictment, and now Henry Samueli, beloved philanthropist who's trying to stay out of jail. So the indictments and the pleas, the fines and all that for a huge company here, that was a big story. And Steve, I know you want to talk a little bit about the Obama phenomenon, but we don't have time.
Understand.
Okay, so let's go to predictions.
This is Orange County.
But obviously, Obama did better than any Democrat presidential candidate in Orange County since FDR. What's a prediction? Give us a prediction for the coming year, Steve.
I think that in light of what's going on with the Illinois governor and corruption, it's very interesting that we have our own story brewing in Orange County with Chris Street. And I expect that we may see indictments coming down in connection with his operation.
Now that's pretty harsh to say. I mean, come on. That's
well, if it wasn't a harsh prediction, who'd be interested in it?
Okay. All right, well, that's a harsh prediction. Adam, do you have a prediction for the coming year?
Going with the county-wide office holder, I would suggest that a strong and viable candidate will emerge for the office of sheriff against LA's own Sandra Hutchins.
Will she be coming from the Republican side?
I have no idea, but I think it would be someone who's strong.
Bill Quickie?
Pro-gun.
Very quick.
Obviously, the Republicans have finally figured out that they can't exert their influence on a quality, independent sheriff, and they're going to go out and find some stooge.
You can watch this show and past shows by going to KOC.org and clicking on Inside OC. My guests have been no three stooges here. Bill Mitchell, Steve Young, and Adam Probolsky. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again Inside OC.
Inside OC is brought to you by the following.
Lennar.com. Today's new homes. Everything you want. Everything you need. That's the logic of Lennar. Lennar.com.
Support comes from City National Bank, providing complete financial solutions to entrepreneurs, their businesses, and their families on the way up in Orange County for more than 30 years. City National Bank believes in the power of the entrepreneur. On the web at cnb.com.
The City of Anaheim. Founded in 1857, Anaheim is Orange County's original city and California's 10th largest city. Information on living, working, or visiting Anaheim is available at www.anaheim.net.
The law firm Stradling, Yaka, Carlson & Routh, a full-service corporate law firm in Southern California, celebrating 30 years, serving businesses and the communities of Orange County with valuable legal advice.